here's part 3. So now we're a little closer, but I'm still maintaining my distance, of course. I'm also respecting their space, as you're supposed to. So, as I mentioned in my last video, these American alligators are truly a apex predator. But the thing is, a lot of questions that people ask all the time about them is, how can you tell the difference between a male and a female? Well, there's really not an entirely clear-cut way once they reach into maturity. But one way that you can is to base it off of their size. So for one thing, males always tend to be larger in terms of body mass and even their body length too, for another. So usually males on average may reach as much as, I think one of the records was 17 feet. But usually on average 12 to 14. Females, on the other hand, they're usually a bit smaller, and same thing, their body mass is maybe roughly the same, but their body length is shorter. They usually range about, probably about 10, 12 feet. I think when I said the males, I was saying inches. I think I meant to say feet. Pardon me. I don't remember. But anyway, that's one way that you can distinguish. Another is actually during their incubation period. So, those of you not as familiar with the term incubation, it refers to basically when the eggs are being warmed, in a sense, so that once they're warm enough, the new generation will sprout. I make them sound like they're plants, but anyway, females tend to be cooler, like the incubation temperature. Usually most females, anywhere with an incubation temperature below 86 degrees Fahrenheit, will usually result in a female. Whereas males, on the other hand, the incubation temperature of the egg is usually above 90, or usually above 86, or even up to 90 degrees Fahrenheit. So that's the thing. With the subject of climate change, with warming temperatures, that could perhaps pose an issue, because the warmer it is, the more males you may have as a result. And that's the last thing you want, is to have more males. You need to have females too, in order to even allow reproduction to be possible. Wow. Just the way they swim. It's pretty neat how they swim. So basically they use their tail as a rudder, and the rest of their body, they just keep it dangling, pretty much. So another feature that I wanted to note to you guys is, you may have noticed that they have spiny backs. So the reason for that is they have a known feature now called osteoderms. So what that basically means is bony plates. So these osteoderms are very porous bone. because it allows blood to pass through their body easily. And since they're ectothermic, they need to have frequent blood flow so that it has an opportunity to warm up. But in a sense, they kind of act like a shield, or at least they resemble one. Now, some of you, I'm sure, have had the question, how can you really tell the difference between, say, an alligator, a caiman, or a crocodile? Well, one thing, first and foremost, that you need to look at is their snout. So let's take this one for example. Let's see if I can get a close-up, maybe. There we go, I can zoom in a little bit. So if you look at their snout, you can see that it's a bit more of a U shape. It's a wide snout. Crocodiles, on the other hand, have more of a pointed tip. So it's more like a triangular shape, like think of like a pencil, a sharpened pencil, for example. But then of course you have your caiman too, C-A-I-M-A-N. Now you won't necessarily find caiman here in Florida, but you can find them in other regions of the world. The caiman, I believe, tends to have a shorter snout. And for another, I believe their snouts also have like a little hump on them too. So that's basically how you can distinguish between the three of them. For another, you'll never see alligators in salt water, ever. Because their body lacks the osmoregulation to process salt. So they can only inhabit freshwater. Unlike crocodiles, they can inhabit brackish water and even saltwater. So Florida is the only place in the world that has a population of both alligators and crocodiles. But crocodiles, you'll only see them way far south in the Everglades. But every now and then, you may see them north as here, even though that doesn't really happen too often. Wow. So one last thing I wanted to mention to you guys before I wrap up this video is when it comes to alligators, please don't feed them. Because if you feed them, what happens is they lose their natural fear of people. So like, if I was to step any closer, which I obviously wouldn't do, they would flee. And I really don't want them to do that, because that expends energy. So basically, the point is, don't feed them. And when you feed them, they expect food. And thus that causes more aggression among themselves and even among other forms of wildlife. And plus, humans are not a part of their natural diet. And so we don't really want that to happen. So, for another, usually once an alligator is under 4 feet, they have to be relocated so that they lose that imprinting that I speak of. They don't have an established territory yet. Unlike alligators, once they reach over 4 feet and they've become imprinted on people, they have to be relocated. Well, relocated, but in that process, they usually have to be killed or euthanized in some way, shape, or form. And given that they've just had their recent recovery of their population and that they represent the apex predator, that's the last thing we want to do to them. So, in other words, don't feed them. So, alright, you guys, this video was a little longer, so this is going to be my wrap-up point. Thank you for watching, and by the way, to get to Deep Hole, you have to get a permit at the park office, and they only allow up to 30 visitors per day. That's it. So fortunately, because of that particular practice, it never gets overcrowded here, because otherwise it would be, and then the alligators would never come here. So be sure to keep that in mind too. And fortunately, the permits are free as long as you pay your park fee. That's it. So, alright, you guys, take care, enjoy your Sunday, and journey on a journey is outwards. Take care, folks. See ya.